Now, SABC News reporter Khayelihle Khumalo has been monitoring today's meeting of foreign ministers in Nasrec and joins us in studio to just take us through the day's proceedings. Good afternoon, Khayelihle. Thank you for joining us.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
No, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. So this meeting is taking place at a time when the globe is dealing with a number of crises. Just talk us through the president's address and how he reflected some of these.
Well, certainly quite a very important moment for South African Fundo, where President Ramaphosa really is talking about all these challenges, really almost like overlapping crises, whether you're talking about the geopolitical challenges, issues around poverty eradication, underdevelopment, and many other problems, really, but also most importantly, these conflicts as well. But I think what has been a very key message for him is that there should be a consensus within the G20 countries, especially because there are areas of differences. I mean, for example, you do have the powerful economy in the world, the United States of America, Marco Rubio, not being part of these discussions, albeit the US represented by their diplomatic staff. But also of significance for South Africa is just the inclusion of Africa, the global south, as you know, Fundo, that's from Indonesia all the way to India to Brazil. Now it's South Africa's 10. We've seen the global south really carrying the G20. Quite a very important time for them to make sure that they really tackle all these issues.
Most certainly a very important time for Africa as well. You've just touched on Marco Rubio's absence. Let's talk about those who are in attendance.
Obviously, I mean, quite a powerful foreign affairs ministers from a number of countries. You do have Sergei Lavrov representing the Russian Federation. You do have Canada as well represented. You have the Saudis. And also you do have some of the non-G20 members who are invited, the likes of Norway, Netherlands. Also, we do understand Angola as well, especially because Angola took over as a new chairperson of the African Union. So by virtue of that, they really do have a clout. But also we saw that significant development in New Delhi, where the African Union got admitted into this particular structure, especially really reflecting the really understanding that if you talk about inequality, a lot of challenges are still right here in sub-Saharan Africa and other parts of the world. But also when you talk, for example, about the issues of climate change, we really see the impact, the desertification of so many parts in the continent, and really a big issue for the world as well.
Now, speaking of big issues, what are the issues that we expect to dominate these conversations in the next 2 days?
I think for South Africa, for example, the issue around finding resilience funding, especially for the disasters, you know, the post-disasters, climate change, also at the forefront here, but also the issues of debt sustainability. As you know, that Fundo, quite a number of countries really are battling with a big issue when it comes to the use of their funds, where, you know, the costs are very excessive, where they spend so much money servicing the debts as opposed to
development.
Very much so. For the social expenditure, South Africa is really pushing that as well. But also for the just energy transition, we know that for some time South Africa, collaborating with a number of Western countries, has been pushing that issue as well. But a very fourth priority area will have to be around beneficiation. I mean, it's not really a new issue, but South Africa is saying it's high time that if you really source the gold here, you know, the resources, to make sure that the refinery, everything should happen in the point of origin as opposed to pit to port, where it's going to another area and then it's coming back 10 times more in terms of the cost. But also, I suppose, a lot of issues as well around the reforms of the United Nations Security Council. I mean, to the words of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he said the current model is quite outdated, really representing and reflecting the realities of 1945. And a lot has happened. The new economies are coming to the fore, with your China, so many others as well.
These are most certainly very important topics when we look at the debt issue. We also look at the reforms of the multilateral institutions. All of these, Kai, as you state, even the beneficiation. These are not novel concepts. They always have these conversations whenever there are such significant gatherings. But now one wonders if at this specific 2-day meeting, it will lead to some sort of meaningful change.
Well, at least that's what South Africa is pushing for, especially because if they talk about consensus, they do know that with these gatherings, you'll have a plethora of voices from so many countries. I think that's why they're trying to keep everything shortened so that they don't really bombard themselves with a litany of things where they do know that obviously it's going to be a lofty wish list and nothing ever comes in terms of implementation. So I think when you talk about the Shepherds of South Africa, led by Zendango, the current Director General of International Relations and Cooperation, they're really trying to work with so many of their partners, but also a key institution will have to be the Troika within the G20. You're talking about the former chair of G20, that's Brazil, the current chair, South Africa, and also the incoming chair, the United States of America. So it's going to be really interesting as well, the culmination point in November this year. Will Trump come to Africa? It's going to be really interesting, especially where we can see some point of differences when it comes to the land reform program in South Africa, where they do make all sorts of uninformed assertions, and South Africa has been very clear to say that we're very much a constitutional democracy. There is no willy-nilly land grab where all sorts of chaotic things are happening.